Hello, I'm Wendy Wilson, and I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Realizing Potential. I'm excited about today's guest. We've known each other probably for about a year and a half and have an amazing partnership with the foundation that he represents. He is none other than Mr. Daryl Graham. How are you today?
Good afternoon, Dr. Wilson. It is a pleasure to be here with you, and thank you so much for the invite and allowing us to come on to this wonderful show and to talk about the great work that we're doing and great partnership that we have with wonderful HBCUs, and
Absolutely,
particularly
absolutely.
Albany State.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to have you. So you are the Senior Vice President of the Strada HBCU Initiative and Engagement. That's a mouthful, sir. I just want you to know that. And we do have a partnership, an amazing partnership. You provide great opportunities to our students. But before you tell us a little bit more about that, we'd like to learn more about you. If you could tell us a little bit about your educational background and what then your career path has included up until this current position.
Sure. I hail from Baltimore, Maryland. Uh, Born and raised there. Went through various iterations of secondary school and middle school there, and that really shaped my thinking around what I wanted to do with my life. And so, my father, an entrepreneur, as well as an officer in the United States Army, was an entrepreneur and had a few businesses. And I met some fine gentlemen who decided to mentor me and coach me and said, "We heard you were great in math. Perhaps you should start taking some accounting courses in high school." And that's what I began to do. And that just catapulted my secondary education, to making the dean's list and making the honor roll, which was not something that I typically did. But it really was captivating to me because I felt like education was going to be a better part of my life going forward versus I played basketball for a number of years and even in high school and in my first year of college. So I decided that I was going to pursue a degree in accounting because I really liked the suits that accountants and lawyers wore, and I really liked the presence that they had. And we'll talk about one of the books I'm reading now, which talks about presence and being ready a little bit later on. And so I decided to start my post-secondary experience on a partial basketball scholarship at Hampton University. And while there, I thought that there was a good institution with a good accounting program. But as I began to matriculate and do a little bit more research, I found that the connections at Morgan State University with Ernst& Young were fairly deep. The connection with the National Association of Black Accountants were even deeper. I decided that Morgan State University was the place where I needed to be in order to pursue my accounting career in the most efficient, effective way. So I decided to transfer from Hampton to Morgan State University, and things just took off from there. I learned a lot about uh, accounting. I learned a lot about business. I learned a lot about being a good communicator. I learned a lot about just being a Black man in society as well, which really helped me to understand authentically who I was as a person. And so, with all of that taking place, I pledge this wonderful fraternity as a part of that, proud member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated as well. So all of those things really helped to shape my thought around what I wanted to be and where I wanted to go. And with all the great connections to an accounting firm back then, Big Six firm, Ernst& Young, I really wanted to have that experience, what it would be like to manage engagement, to understand different industries, and those sorts of things. So I began my career after a wonderful commencement from Morgan State University, where I graduated with an accounting degree to pursue my career start at KPMG. And KPMG was great for me, moving to a place like Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where I learned a lot about myself. Coming from an HBCU, being authentically a Black man, I felt more confident in who I was. I felt more confident in my abilities and my skills as well. And that confidence really helped me to be successful in my 3 year stint there. So the great thing about the Harrisburg office, which also helped me a great deal with confidence and being a professional that people would rely on to be present, professional that people would call upon to actually want me to engage with them and run engagements for various partners that we had in the firm. And that's what really allowed me to grow. And so my second year, small office like Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, you get to manage engagements yourself. So those relationship management skills really began to develop in that second year as I was managing and running engagements at the age of 24 years old. So that really was a turning point for me from a career perspective, because as a young man, authentically knowing who I was and who I am at that point in time, it really helped me to begin to think about what the career pathway could look like going forward and what my options could be if I decided to stay in public accounting or if I decided to move on and do something else. So I did. I moved on to something else. I left Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, moved to Cleveland, Ohio, and I took a job with LTV Steel as a controller. But there was something that was still missing that I really wanted to do, and I couldn't quite figure it out yet. But I stayed the course, continued my career there, managed $45 million of subsidiary of LTV Steel, and then also was managed an assistant controller who also managed another $15 million subsidiary of LTV Steel at that time. I then left LTV Steel because I felt like there was something that I really wanted to do and learn more. And I really wanted to develop stronger and more appropriate leadership skills for what I thought I wanted to do with my accounting degree and my finance career. And so I left LTV Steel and I went to go work for GE Lighting in East Cleveland, Ohio, and was able to get into the Jack Welch leadership program, which allowed you to learn directly from him. He would come to the meetings. He would talk with you about things that were important to him. You would read his books as well as listen to his speeches and listen to his methodology. And the one thing that you learn from that is being around a guy like Jack Welch, he's no longer with us, may you rest in peace, is you never bring a problem to anybody as a leader if you haven't thought about what the solutions could be.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. Let me cut you off for and I want you to pick back up. Thank you so much for sharing that aspect of your career. Fun fact about me is I started off at Southern majoring in accounting. I didn't get past intermediate accounting, Mr. Graham. Yeah.
That's all right.
That wasn't my ministry and my calling. So hats off to anyone that has been that pursued that and clearly had a level of success. I stopped you at the point of your Jack Welch experience and what you learned as it relates to leadership development. And I do want us to go back to what came after that, and then certainly your current role. You chose that, and then you were very intentional. You chose that academic discipline, and then very intentional about how I need to professionally develop. With that experience, the Jack Welch, is it CH?
Welch. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to make that
Welch.
an SH. Yeah. So with that experience, and then having been a student firsthand, I can't imagine what that experience was like. How were you able to then apply that to the roles that came after, and then now your current role?
Yeah, it was one of those things where you don't necessarily think about some of the things that you do. I began to think more about how I conducted myself when I wasn't, on camera, if you will. I began to think about things that I could do to help my community, as an example. Jack was very big on being a leader in all aspects of what you do, and being a leader in your community was very important. So one of the things that started is I got involved with the community efforts, and we adopted East Cleveland High School, and we began to gather people at GE Lighting, which is a very small campus called Neela Park in East Cleveland, which is probably about 0.4 miles away from the high school in East Cleveland. East Cleveland was the lowest income census tract in the entire state of Ohio at that time. And so we decided that we were going to gather folks, males and females, and we were going to go to East Cleveland High School and make a proposal to them that we'd like to start a mentoring program with them. And we'll bring at least 15 males and 15 females, and you guys can bring as many as 25 males and females each, and we'd be happy to work with them and mentor them. And we started this initiative, and it just took off. We would go once a week to the campus. We would talk about key things that students were trying to figure out in life. Many students were being raised by a grandparent or some other relative other than their parents because of high incarceration rates, high death rates, and the like. And it turned out to be a great thing that we did for several years. And it was something that started out of just having this wonderful conversation with Jack Welch about how we could be involved in the community. So that started the momentum for me, not just taking a job and going and working and you can make good money and have a great career. It is, what are you going to do to be a better contributor in your community as a leader, as well as be a contributor inside of an organization? And that's where that started for me. So that really ran into what I wanted to do when I would pursue other organizations that I wanted to go and work with. I left GE after about 3 years and went to Phoenix, Arizona to work for a group called Tosco Corporation, which is now known as ConocoPhillips. Oil and gas industry, some marketing, those sorts of things. What I did when I moved to Phoenix is I said I wanted to be a part of a leadership program there, and they had this wonderful program called the Black Board of Directors Program, and it was in partnership with the Urban League of Phoenix, United Way, and the Phoenix Suns were actively involved. So a guy by the name of Mark West, so those who are basketball fanatics, and Kevin Johnson, who became the mayor of Sacramento, that team, that group of folks, they were very involved in the community, and it just made me even more, you know, diligent about wanting to get involved and wanting to actually do something to make things better for other people, particularly people who didn't have a voice. And so stayed there for 2 years. Great experience, great time. But the big change occurred when I left Phoenix and moved back east to Delaware and joined JP Morgan Chase. At JP Morgan Chase, I was able to start this new program. It was in partnership with a co-branded program with the Walt Disney Company, which still exists to this day. And it's one of the largest portfolios from a retail perspective, commercial perspective at JP Morgan, prior to me coming there and prior to them doing these types of initiatives. And so I was able to take all of that experience and bring it to this initiative, develop real strong relationships, working more in an FP&A, financial planning and analysis perspective on this wonderful and amazing team. But the other thing that I did is I said I wanted to be involved in the community. So two things happened which changed the trajectory of my entire career. One, I got involved with Leadership Delaware. I joined two nonprofit boards that were very active in the city, very active in Newcastle County, largest county in Delaware. And it also allowed me to join what they called then the market leadership team in Delaware. That team was responsible for all the philanthropic giving in the market. And that group would meet on a monthly basis with the JP Morgan Chase Foundation team to go over what the opportunities were and how we could make inroads in helping the community better. Affordable housing, housing counseling, financial literacy, all sorts of programs that really help to make the community better around us. And so that change was fairly significant because it allowed me to get involved with philanthropic efforts fairly intimately. and that's when I began to get the bug. And so in joining that committee, being a part of leadership in Delaware, I began to think about what a career change could look like. And when the JP Morgan Chase merger happened with Bank One and JP Morgan and the like, there's a wonderful Spelman grad by the name of Kimberly Davis, who's also a member of your wonderful sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha, who said to me that it's time for us to change the world, and we're going to change the world by creating global philanthropy at JP Morgan Chase. And that's when the philanthropy bug hit me. And in 2005, I became a member of Global Philanthropy, the first ever group in global philanthropy at JP Morgan Chase.
Impressive career, Mr. Graham. Impressive career. And we have yet to get to Strada yet.
It's a long
Yeah.
road to get to Strata.
I don't want to miss this point that you made earlier about you're a proud Morgan State grad, and you talked about and then spent some time prior to that at Hampton University, both of them very impressive HBCUs. But I think it's important. Of course, we know the the grand history of historically Black colleges and universities, why they were put into place or established, creating opportunities that did not exist for individuals that look like you and have produced millions of just exemplary and outstanding individuals. But you said something that I think is key. So, in addition to the academic piece, how we want to then enter into our professional spaces, you said it helped in your development as a man, and particularly as a Black man. And so, what I believe, you can certainly weigh in on this, is that what it provides, in addition to the academic piece and the social development, is an opportunity to see yourself and a celebration of yourself, in addition to holding oneself accountable for what awaits them, and couple that with preparation. And that's not something that is often seen or certainly celebrated in the greater society. So you
Yeah,
walk away with this amazing feeling that you can absolutely conquer the world.
exactly. The true meaning of empowerment, right? And that's
Mhm.
exactly how I felt when I finished school and received my degree at commencement day. There were just turning points, and the GE was a turning point, and then this JP Morgan Chase heading into global philanthropy was a significant turning point because it was the first time in my life where I was able to bring my true authentic self, not just to help the organization, but to have a significant influence on the community in which I lived in. And so, we were making at that time about $8 million worth of investments in the community each year. And to be a Black man and to be able to be a part of the mainstream conversations, not just having a seat at the table, but having a voice in the conversation, which is a very different thing, just sitting at the table versus being a contributor in the conversation and coming up with solutions as a part of that. That was really big for me. And it also allowed me to bring all the GE process improvement things that I was able to learn with Black Belt and Green Belt Six Sigma to bring my accounting, background into the realm as we started talking about financing and budgeting. We brought together three organizations to create Global Philanthropy, JP Morgan Chase, which all had $100 million budget. So now we have a $300 million budget globally for JP Morgan Chase Global Philanthropy, and we have to figure out what that's going to look like. And then we have to figure out the system that we're going to utilize in order for us to house all of these three things converging together. And so I was able to be on the analytics team, the project teams, and those sorts of things, which really helped to catapult me into this leadership role within JP Morgan Chase, which then got me highlighted onto LinkedIn. And that's where Strada found me on LinkedIn.
Outstanding. We need to take a quick break. And then on the other side of the break, we're going to learn about the great things you do for Strada and then our relationship here at Albany State University. We'll be right back, viewers.
When you graduate, they graduate.
Thank you so much, Mr. Graham, for sharing with me and our viewers the first part of your career journey and path. Quite impressive, sir, I must say. Can you now transition us into what led you to your current role with Strada and what it is that you do? I'm a little biased. Albany State is a partner with this great initiative, and so I have nothing but great things to say. But we'll let you tell the viewers about the genesis of the HBCU initiative and your specific role.
Sure. And it's okay to be biased because, I have a great deal of bias as well. The great work that you do, the great work that's happening at Albany State University. And we're very appreciative of the partnership.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as I was reflecting earlier on how I got to Strata, all of those things really created this opportunity to leave JP Morgan after a wonderful 16-year career there, most of it being in philanthropy, helping with systems and the like. Well, as it turns out, Strada was making this pretty significant transition from a student loan guarantor to a nonprofit organization, more of a corporate holding company focused on post-secondary education opportunities and leveling the playing field. It needed a lot of work as well. So all those things I learned around Six Sigma process improvement, things I learned from all these different roles really created the opportunity to come to Strada. And when I first got here, I was heading up philanthropy, the overall philanthropy operations, because of my experience at JP Morgan Chase. It just created this wonderful environment where the sky opened up and the sunlight came through, and it was, let's go to Strada. And so I spent the first 5 years doing pretty much similar things that I had done at JP Morgan. And then, this interesting thing came along, and this thing called the pandemic. And when the pandemic came along, we were all sitting at home and there wasn't anywhere to go. So when the George Floyd incident occurred, everybody had this perspective or view into something that had been happening for a long time. But now we're all a captive audience in our homes or wherever we were at that time. And to watch the murder of George Floyd, it just was a catapulting event for us as a society, as a world. And of course, that's here at Strada. We began thinking about and talking about this with our board of trustees about what we should do. And so I put on my hat of, excuse me, trying to pull together a small team to say, if we're going to do something, what significant, thing could we do and how could we frame it and shape it? And we began to have conversations about development of a leadership program and a leadership initiative, and where do we start? And so the discussion was HBCUs, tribal colleges, HSIs, MSIs, the whole alphabet soup around that. And as we began to work on this initiative with several of our board chair at that time, Mr. Ed Schmidt, and one of our trustees, Dr. Marshall Grigsby, it was a defining moment for many of us because we have many ties, obviously, to our own personal heritage, but also to HBCUs. And so what happened as we were in the midst of all this was the passing of John Lewis, Congressman John Lewis, former racial justice leader, civil rights leader and the like. His passing made us rethink this a bit more. And we began to say, perhaps we should start with HBCUs. So we created a small team. I created a small team of folks, and we began working on a very significant initiative, and it would focus and start on HBCUs. And we created these wonderful scenarios and took it to our board, and our board said, we'll approve it for $25 million over 8 years. And so in August of 2020, our board basically said, let's go, we want to do something. Well, then we're faced with, well, what do we do now? And so we begin to, sit around and talk about these ideas around what we could do. And as it turns out, it was, we don't know enough, even though I'm an proud HBCU alum. I haven't been on the campus in, let's just say over 25 years. Maybe that's a good number, right? And so it was, let's not announce anything because we don't have anything to say and we don't know what we're going to do. We decided that we were going to open up the invitation to all 101 accredited HBCUs at that time to let them know that we've been approved for $25 million over an 8-year period for an HBCU initiative. And we want to have a conversation with any of you all who are willing to do so, so that we can move this initiative forward with the right context, with the needs that exist now, and being a partner in this and not being a dictator as a funder. And that happens a lot when you're a funder, because he or she who has a goal, sets the rules. Well, this was, let's not do that. Mm-hmm. So as that began to formulate, I changed my role from Senior Vice President of Philanthropy, and I became the lead and the head for the HBCU Initiative and our engagement activities.
So as we started off this phase of the conversation, Albany State is fortunate enough to be one of those partners. And I've been involved from the beginning as it relates to being a representative for the Albany State University, or representing Albany State University through Strada, and then also just working directly with the scholars, which is one of the highlights of my job, I have to say, along with my partner in crime, Dr. Lyons, who is over the honors program. But what impresses me the most, and I don't want to miss this opportunity to say that the offerings are just beyond one's imagination. So there's a financial component, there's a financial scholarship that you all provide the scholars. You then extend us the opportunity to then select these amazing individuals who are, at the top tier of their academic levels and pursuits. So thus the word scholar. And then what I absolutely love is that you all yearly convene them. So all of the scholars from across the country or that are participating in this initiative get together and see themselves representing their respective campuses or institutions, and then have an opportunity to exercise and further develop their leadership skills. So the plan was very well thought out, I must say. And again, I'm very biased because of Albany State's active involvement in that. So I don't know that I've officially ever thanked you for that, because I've just seen, I've seen the transformation in our particular scholars. So so much was birthed out of the horrific murder that the world saw, George Floyd, and some good things came out of that, if that's even possible, but it did. So thank you for you and the team of collaborators with saying that there's something that we can do in the pursuit of social and racial justice, and then impact the lives and create legacies, because that's what you all are doing with this gift that you bestow these scholars.
Absolutely. And, you're welcome. But we also want to thank our dear partner and friends at Albany State University in Albany, Georgia, because you all were a part of the listening tour. And so the one thing that we heard as a part of that listening tour, which was 35 institutions actually participated, and you all were one of the first, I think one of the first 5 or 6 institutions that said yes, and we were on a Zoom call, because everything was Zoom calls back then, to really begin to talk about what the needs were. And one of the things that came from, and thank you Albany State for this, the conversation with you all was for rural institutions, internships are somewhat difficult to come by. Although in hearing the work that Dr. Lyons does and has been doing and continues to do, it's absolutely amazing. We felt as though we needed to be more flexible. So in addition to the $7,000, because we didn't have a number when we started a listening tour on what the number would be for scholars, we wanted it to be something significant. And so there was a group here that wanted 5, and there was my group that wanted 10. So we met in the middle at $7,000 per student, which is $28,000 over a 4-year, post-secondary education experience, which is great. And then the $1,200 that we put in for each student each year for leadership development as well. But the $1,200 for internship was really going to be specific around internships. With the help of Albany State, it's internship support, which has a broad swath of things that actually fit into that. And so we thank you all for being very direct and open and authentic with us about what it would take in order for that to work for not just those institutions that are in urban environments that have closer connections to employers, but what it could look like for more rural institutions, where it might be a situation where you're going to have to do some somersaults in order for you to have a great internship experience. And that might be a little bit more costly for the student, might be a little bit more costly for the institution. We want it to be a bridge in that, so that we could have these resources be helpful, but also have you all be not just the students and the scholars being empowered, but we wanted the institutions to feel empowered as well.
Yeah, that's absolutely huge because what I oftentimes took for granted until Dr. Lyons enlightened me on this. She's just an amazing individual and very committed to the overall and the holistic development of our students, and then the professional piece. So more than just assisting you with earning your degree, making sure that you're showing up in your best light and self. She works hard to also identify those internships. And she's very specific because she only pursues or she works to pursue those where it's all encompassing, everything is paid for. Sometimes there's probably more often than not, she's very targeted with that. But there are those internships that don't, I'm going to compensate you, but how you get to our location, whether that be plane, train, or automobile, your living expenses may not be covered in that. So with this wonderful stipend that you all provide, that can help defray some of that cost. So thank you so much for that. I don't want to miss the thought. Please share. I shared a little bit of it, but you can do a better job. What was the thought behind we need to convene all of these amazing individuals together once a year and then specifically pour into them as it relates to leadership development?
Sure. So, of course, being a philanthropic organization, we had invested in many different programs and initiatives that are helpful for students, including an MSI symposium, which we hosted years ago, and an MSI initiative, and several other partners that work directly with students. And what we learned and gleaned from those experiences is it always helps to have a cohort model on a campus because you feel like there's support. And it's a little bit different for, HBCUs versus, IVs or Big Ten schools and the like. That sense of belonging, on an HBCU campus does exist. But we wanted to be intentional about that since the early adopters like Albany State, you get 3 students per year for 4 years. That's 12 students. So a cohort on campus where the mentoring and coaching and just the camaraderie can exist. We wanted that to take place. But since we have, 50 institutions involved, 49 others outside of Albany State, we wanted to have the opportunity for scholars to come together, but also for leaders from campuses to come together in a way in which we're sharing experiences, best practices, creating opportunities for scholars to get to know one another from across the country. In a meaningful way so that they don't feel like they're just alone on their campus, which they don't because they're part of a nice group on campus. I was able to spend time with you all at Albany State recently and wonderful campus, 2 campuses really, East and West, very sizable, beautiful. But to spend time with the scholars, and this is, I think, our 24th or 25th visit to a campus, partner campus. And what we've seen in this is the model works well on the campus, but the model exceeds all expectations when we come together and have the summit. So the summit was really intended to take all the things that scholars are learning on all these wonderful campuses with all these wonderful leaders and bring them together so that they could see that the world is bigger than my block. The world is bigger than my state, by being on a wonderful HBCU campus, but that the world can open up for all of you, as a part of this, and now with over 320 Strada scholars on 49 campuses across the country, 19 states, that level of camaraderie and that level of exposure, has been significant, far more significant than we thought, from what we had seen before. And I think a lot of that has to do with how we engage with the partners. You mentioned your role. Thank you, Dr. Wilson, because you also helped us to develop, curriculum, for the initiative. You also helped us to make the Leadership Summit more meaningful with the contributions that you've made as a partner there and helping students to understand what being present is, what your brand is, your presence on social media. There's a lot of irresponsible social media out there, and that social media irresponsibility can lead to lots of things not happening for you. Absolutely. If you're not very careful. And so we're very, thoughtful about who we partner with, but we're very thankful that the partnership with Albany State didn't just start as, we wrote a check. it started with you guys being a part of us developing the initiative, and it started and it continued as you all helped us to develop what the summit could look like. And so your contributions as well have been very helpful there. So we appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely. It's certainly remains my pleasure to be involved and to represent Albany State. And I always enjoy, it's my done for 2 years. You all have done the summit for 2 years, and I've been involved in that. It is always, I take away more than I believe that I gift and bestow to all of those individuals, because within a 48-hour period, you just see major transformation. And again, a continuance of that celebration that we talked about that happens on HBCU campuses. So thank you for your active and continued role as Senior Vice President of this amazing initiative. Before we wrap up, we want to learn a little personal side of you, sir. So can you share with the viewers a book that is most impacted your life, influenced you? You may find yourself going back to it from time to time. And your second question is, if you had the opportunity to invite 2 to 3 individuals to dinner, they can be on an international scale, living or deceased, who would those individuals be and what would you serve? So we'll start with the book question.
Sure. So I wish I could narrow it down to one, but
Yeah.
I'm going to narrow it down to 3 really quickly. So there's one book, Jack Welch's book around leadership. That's a book that I read. It really helped me to begin to rethink how I conduct, myself as a person. People are always watching, people are always paying attention. And that was the one thing that I wasn't necessarily aware of, a lot as I was a young professional. And it made me rethink, when I go to the grocery store now, I don't go to the grocery store with, pajamas on. I don't go to the airport, like I'm about to go to sleep or go to bed. Like there are things that you learn along the way. And so that was one that helped me. Stephen Covey's book on the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People was another book that influenced me as well. And then there's a new book that I'm reading, and it's 101 Career Planning and Executive Presence Strategies by Dr. Wendy Wilson. And there are things in that book that I think are so pertinent to young professionals as well as seasoned professionals. I only wish that book existed when I was, a sophomore, junior in college, because there are things that are stated in that wonderful book that you wrote, Dr. Wilson, that I think will be very helpful, to young adults to be prepared. And I have shared it with many of my friends. I've shared it with many colleagues, and I've also shared it on LinkedIn that if you haven't read the book, you certainly should get it. It's not a long read, but there's a lot of great nuggets in there that could really help you as you prepare for your pathway in your career. And I think it will be extremely helpful for folks to read your book and to take in, all that knowledge and figure out how you can execute going forward a little bit differently with those thoughts in mind. So great job.
Thank you so much. And thank you for that unpaid, unsolicited endorsement, sir. Thank you. I wasn't expecting that, but I received that. And thank you so much for saying that. You had me in some really great company too, Covey and Welch.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Quite honored. Thank you. And I'm glad that the book is making a difference. It was certainly a labor of love. So thank you for that. So you're hosting this dinner. Who are we inviting and what are we serving?
Yeah, at this dinner, it would be Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., it would be Malcolm X, and it would be the incomparable Quincy Jones. And the reason why that I believe would work is because could you just imagine, the great maestro and arranger that Quincy Jones is? We all listen to his music, and it isn't just music, because if you listen to the songs, there's a message, in those songs. And it's a way that they're arranged in which they're pleasing to the ear, they're pleasing to the spirit, they're pleasing to your soul in many ways, and definitely connected to who we are as people authentically. And I'm just imagining how if we had a good marinating of all of those things that Martin talked about and all those things that Malcolm talked about, and Quincy Jones could arrange them, what a difference it would be in our world if we could have that happen. Indeed. And so I thought about that from that perspective. And of course, the food in this would have to be gumbo. because when you mix all of these great ingredients up in gumbo, you get something amazing.
of
And
course.
so I just believe that, that would be the best, dinner that I would want to see happen and would dream about. And I think we would all learn from it. The experiences that you would learn from that could change the world.
Indeed. That's an impressive guest list. If that were to ever happen, we know two of those individuals are no longer with us, but you should invite me to be your sous chef. Oh my gosh.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's some
Absolutely.
questions that I want to ask all of those gentlemen too myself. So yeah, that's a good group that you listed off. Mr. Daryl Graham, it has certainly been my pleasure to have you on the show. I'm excited about the work that I know that awaits. I don't know, what life is after Strada. I know I can imagine you have some years to go before you venture off into something else. But I do want to say thank you for your intentional focus on gifting back to this well-deserving population demographic of students and then targeting HBCUs. HBCUs give so much to the global community and still don't quite receive all that they deserve in return. So
Yes.
you
Yes.
all have made the Strada, your Strada colleagues, with your intentional effort to kind of course correct or make a bigger difference. Is certainly to be commended. Albany State is certainly honored to be a part of that, and it just warms my heart to see the level of impact. So if there's ever an opportunity for Albany State to play a bigger role, we will certainly be there to support Strada and again, the scholars across the board. So thank you so much. Know that you are always welcome back to Realizing Potential.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wilson. And again, this work would not be possible without partnership. And we appreciate the partnership with Albany State University and the HBCU community. And as a product of the HBCU community, the one thing that, we're 3 years into an 8-year initiative. The one thing that is there's still some unfinished business that needs to be taken care of over these next 5 years. And so we're certainly looking forward to making sure these students cross the finish line, as a collective, and we will make sure that our partners are surely congratulated and thanked for all the great work that you're already doing. And the hope is that others will see that this is a great way, and we're partnering with HBCUs, and it's a different way for funders to do that, and we're very proud of that. So thank you so much.
Oh, our pleasure, and thank you for being the example. Viewers, thank you so much for this edition of Realizing Potential. I'm Wendy Wilson, and I look forward to seeing you next time.